I used to laugh at people who said they felt watched in their own homes until I learned what that actually feels like. I lived alone during my junior year of college in a tiny off-campus apartment that was barely more than a box. It wasn't fancy, but it was mine. 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom, creaky floors, and a thin front door that never quite shut right unless I deadbolted it. It wasn't in a great neighborhood, but rent was cheap, and I kept a can of pepper spray on my nightstand. That was enough, I thought. It started small, so small I didn't even notice at first. My shampoo bottle felt a little lighter one morning. I brushed it off. I probably used more than I realized. A towel I always kept folded on the rack would be damp when I hadn't used it. Again, I blamed my own forgetfulness. I was tired, overworked, probably imagining things. But one thing kept nagging at me, the shower curtain. I always kept it drawn shut. Not halfway, not bunched, fully pulled across. I did it without thinking. Every morning, every night. Yet almost every time I came home, whether from class, work, or even just a coffee run, I'd find it open a few inches. Just enough to see the white tile wall behind it. Just enough to make me feel off. I even joked about it to my friends. Called it the friendly ghost. But I started feeling less like laughing when I'd walk into my apartment and swear it was colder than before. Or when I started hearing what sounded like the faintest shuffle at night, just once or twice a week, like someone adjusting their weight very slowly on linoleum. Still, I kept brushing it off. I had papers due, exams coming up. I wasn't about to go full paranormal investigator over a damp towel and a weird curtain. Then one Friday afternoon, I came home early from my job at the campus library. My boss had let me go an hour early, and I thought I'd surprise myself with a nap. I unlocked the door, stepped inside, and immediately froze. The apartment smelled wrong. Not rotten. Not smoke. Just a heavy, damp, stale air like old socks left in a gym locker. My window was still locked. Nothing looked disturbed. But I couldn't shake the sense that I wasn't alone. And that's when I saw it. The bathroom light was off, but the curtain, it was open again. Not just a few inches. This time it was wide open, as if someone had forgotten to reset it after stepping out. My heart began to thud. I didn't go near it. I couldn't. I just stood there, staring at that pale curtain, motionless, for what felt like an hour. Then I told myself, you're being ridiculous. It's a curtain. Maybe the rod is loose. Maybe gravity. Maybe you left it open this morning. So I walked past it, quickly, flicked on the kitchen light, made myself a cup of instant ramen, and tried to ignore the chill in my spine. But that night, I couldn't sleep. I heard something. Around 2:30 a.m. a subtle, low creaking. Not the pipes. Not the fridge. I knew those sounds. This was something else. Something careful. I got out of bed and stood in the hallway in the dark, staring toward the bathroom. I don't know why I didn't turn the light on. Maybe I thought I'd scare off whatever was there, if anything was there. I crept closer, heart pounding in my chest. The curtain was closed. I hadn't touched it since I got home. I stared at it for what felt like forever, then slowly reached out and pulled it aside in one quick motion, like ripping off a bandage. Nothing, just white tile. An empty tub, silence. I felt like a fool, paranoid and exhausted. I went back to bed. 2 days later, I came home in the middle of the day after a class got canceled. I remember unlocking the front door and pushing it open, and hearing the thud of something falling. I rushed in, and the sound had come from the bathroom. The door was half shut. I slowly nudged it open, and there, crouched in the bathtub behind the half-drawn curtain, was a man, thin, bearded, filthy, eyes wide, like a cornered animal. He didn't move. He didn't speak. He'd been hiding in there, living in my bathroom. I screamed so loud I nearly fainted. I ran out of the apartment and called 911. The police arrived within minutes. They found a small bag tucked behind the toilet with some snacks, a stolen phone, and what looked like a journal. He had apparently been sneaking in during the day through the building's unsecured basement access and into a crawl space that connected to my bathroom ceiling vent. The vent cover had been loose for weeks. I'd just never thought to look up. They said he was likely homeless, possibly mentally ill, but non-violent. He told them he picked my apartment because I seemed quiet. That was the last night I stayed there. It had been a long night, one of those chaotic, laughter-soaked evenings that start with a friend, birthday dinner, and spiral into bar hopping and bad dancing at a place that smells like spilled liquor and old wood. The air was sticky, my heels ached, and my phone battery was clinging to life at 6%. It was almost 1:30 a.m., and the city had started to quiet, leaving just a hum of distant traffic and the flicker of dying neon signs. I said my goodbyes outside the last bar and walked a few steps down the street to request an Uber home. I remember fumbling with the app, trying to get enough signal and power to summon a ride before my phone gave out. When it finally pinged and said a driver was 5 minutes away, I let out a relieved sigh and waited beneath a flickering streetlight near the curb. It wasn't even 2 minutes before a black Honda Civic pulled up, tinted windows, scratched rear bumper. No Uber sticker on the windshield, but that didn't raise any red flags for me. I was tipsy, tired, and just wanted to get home. The back window rolled down slightly, and a man's voice asked, "Uber for Rachel?" My name. I nodded and climbed in, thanking him as I settled into the back seat. The doors locked immediately with a loud clunk, which startled me for a second, but I quickly told myself it was normal. Lots of Uber drivers lock the doors automatically, right? It was late, safety first. I buckled in and glanced at the dashboard, expecting to see the little Uber navigation screen, but there was only a regular GPS. That was the first real moment of hesitation, but I still didn't say anything. I just stared at the streetlights bleeding past the window, watching them smear like fireflies across my eyes. He didn't say much, just "How's your night?" in a flat, casual voice that felt more rehearsed than interested. I mumbled something about it being fun, but exhausting, and then we fell into silence. At first, I was too drained to notice, but after a few blocks, I realized we weren't heading toward my apartment. In fact, we were moving away from the area completely. My neighborhood was east, this guy was driving south, past rows of darkened storefronts and into a more industrial part of the city that looked unfamiliar even in the moonlight. I leaned forward a little, suddenly alert, and asked, "Hey, isn't this the wrong way?" The driver didn't look at me. He kept one hand on the wheel, the other resting rigidly on the center console. After a pause, he said, "Traffic's bad, this way is faster." His voice was calm, emotionless, like he'd said it 100 times, but there were no other cars on the road. No tail lights ahead, no red lights. Just empty lanes and the soft rumble of the engine beneath us. A dull pulse started in the back of my neck, a pressure that grew heavier with every second. I unlocked my phone with shaky fingers and opened the Uber app. My ride was still arriving in 1 minute. My stomach dropped. I blinked hard, hoping it was just a glitch, that maybe he hadn't started the ride properly. I refreshed it. The same thing, my assigned driver hadn't even shown up yet. This wasn't my Uber. My throat tightened as my heart began to slam against my ribs. The warmth in my cheeks replaced with a deep, icy dread that spread through my body like a virus. I stared at the back of his head, trying to process it, trying not to panic. I think I got in the wrong car," I said quietly. "Can you pull over for a second?" Still, he didn't answer, didn't slow down, just kept driving. The road was darker now, fewer streetlights, more trees, and long stretches of fence covered in graffiti. There were no shops anymore, no people, just a hollow stretch of silence and cement. "Seriously, pull over. I need to get out," I said louder, leaning forward, but my voice trembled. He didn't even flinch. That silence, the deliberate kind, the kind where someone is ignoring you on purpose, it was the most terrifying thing I'd ever heard. It told me everything I needed to know. I reached for the door handle, but the child lock was on. I couldn't open it. I reached forward toward the front seat to try and unlock it, but he jerked the car slightly, swerving just enough to make me stumble back, my body pressed into the door. I realized then that he knew I wasn't supposed to be in his car, and he wasn't going to stop. My phone was at 2% now. I opened the text thread with my roommate and tried to send a location ping, but the app lagged. I typed, "This isn't my Uber. Help." The phone vibrated once, message not sent, no service. Of course, we slowed at a red light, one of the few still functioning in the area. He tapped his fingers on the steering wheel like he was waiting for something calmly, like this was all part of a routine. And in that split second, I saw my chance. I yanked my bag into my lap, kicked at the back of the driver's seat as hard as I could, and screamed, letting me out. I reached across, praying the front lock was manual, and it was. I flicked it up, opened the door, and dove out into the street. I hit the ground hard, skinning my knees and elbow. The pavement felt like broken glass against my skin. I scrambled to my feet, panting, crying, and ran into the nearest alley between two boarded-up buildings. I heard tires screech behind me. I didn't look back. I ran until my lungs burned, until I collapsed behind a dumpster, phone dead in my hand, my breath shallow and erratic. It took me nearly half an hour to find a gas station. When I finally made it there, the guy behind the counter let me call 911. The dispatcher stayed on the line until the police arrived, and when I told them what had happened, they took down my information, but there wasn't much they could do. I hadn't gotten the guy's license plate. I didn't know his name. There were no cameras on that stretch of road. Just me, a dead phone, and a ride that had vanished. When I got home, I checked the Uber app again. The real driver had arrived 5 minutes after I got in the wrong car and waited for almost 10 before canceling. He'd messaged me, too. "Here at the corner. Let me know if you need help finding the car." I never saw that message. I was already gone by then, already locked inside someone else's car, someone who knew my name. The part that still chills me is this. I never told him my name, not even once. He asked, "Uber for Rachel?" Before I said a word, that means he knew who he was picking up, and that means he had seen me somewhere before, maybe earlier that night, maybe outside the bar, maybe even through the windows. That's what keeps me up sometimes, not just that I got into the wrong car, but that he may have been waiting for me, and he almost succeeded. We bought the baby monitor because it gave us peace of mind. As new parents, sleep came in short, shallow bursts, broken up by feedings, diaper changes, or the smallest whimper from the nursery. The monitor, one of those fancy ones with night vision and a smartphone app, was meant to ease our anxiety, to help us relax knowing that our son was safe in his crib just one room over. At first, it did exactly that. Every night after his bedtime routine, we'd tuck him in, turn on the monitor, and watch him settle beneath the soft blue glow of the nightlight. The static hum of the camera became just another background sound, like the fridge or the air conditioner, comforting, reassuring, until it wasn't. The first time I noticed something odd, I was half asleep on the couch with the monitor open on my phone. My wife had already gone to bed, and I was giving myself an extra hour to decompress. I glanced at the screen to check on our son and saw what looked like two tiny orbs of light near the bottom right corner of the crib. They were faint, so faint I almost thought they were part of the app's interface, or maybe light bouncing off dust particles. Still, they seemed to hover in the same spot every time I looked. I zoomed in, but the pixels blurred too much to make anything out. Shrugging it off, I closed the app and headed to bed. Over the next few days, the eyes or reflections, or whatever they were, started to become more noticeable. They would blink in and out like tiny distant stars, always in the same spot, always still. My wife said it was probably dust caught in the infrared light. "That camera's not perfect," she told me with a yawn, flipping over in bed. "If he's sleeping fine, "Don't worry about it." And she was right. Our baby didn't cry, didn't stir. Every morning, we'd find him lying just where we left him, until the night he wasn't. It was around 3 a.m. when we woke up to screaming, not fussing, not whimpering, but screaming. That primal, full-body cry that makes your heart jump into your throat. We both bolted out of bed, and I reached for my phone as we ran down the hall. The monitor had gone black, just a blank feed with a spinning icon like it was struggling to load. I didn't wait for it to catch up. I shoved open the nursery door and froze. Our son was not in the crib. For one paralyzing second, my brain couldn't process what I was seeing. The blanket was twisted, the mobile above was slowly spinning, and the soft glow of the nightlight flickered, but the crib was empty. That silence between the scream and now was suffocating. My wife gasped behind me and rushed toward the sound, which was coming from the far side of the room, near the window. Our baby was lying on the floor, face red, tears pouring down his cheeks. He wasn't hurt, no bruises, no blood, but he was terrified, shaking with wide eyes that darted toward the crib, even as we picked him up. We checked everything. There was no sign he had climbed out. The railing was too high for him to get over at his age, and there were no objects near enough for him to use as leverage. The baby monitor had rebooted by then and finally came back on. I rewound the footage, grateful that it had recorded even while the live feed was out, and sat there on the floor, phone in hand with my son clutched to my chest. At first it looked normal. Just him lying there, slowly drifting to sleep, the usual twitch of a leg or shift of his blanket. Then, around 2:46 a.m., something appeared. It started as two small lights, those same glowing orbs I had seen before, but they were brighter now, more defined. They hovered near the foot of the crib, not floating like dust, but fixed, like eyes. Then came the part I'll never forget, no matter how many times I've tried to rationalize it. Something moved. Not a shadow, not a trick of the lens. A figure tall, lanky, and impossibly thin emerged from the bottom right corner of the frame. It didn't walk in from the edge, it just rose up, almost like it had been crouched beneath the camera's view, hidden in the base of the crib somehow. Its outline was faint, as if the night vision struggled to process it, but it was there. A head, long limbs, and those two reflective eyes now blinking independently. It stood over the crib for several seconds, motionless. I watched, paralyzed, as it leaned closer, its face never fully visible, like the lens refused to focus on it. And then our baby shifted. The figure reached into the crib, its hand extending with unnatural fluidity, and in a single motion lifted him out like a rag doll. It stepped backward, still holding him, and then vanished off-screen. But here's the thing, we never saw it put him down. The footage jumped. One frame showed the figure cradling our son, and the next he was lying on the floor, wailing, and the figure was gone. We didn't sleep that night. We barely breathed. We kept every light in the house on, kept our son between us in bed, and I deleted the monitor app before sunrise. When we checked the nursery in daylight, everything was as it should be, except for one detail. Behind the crib, where the camera had faced the wall, there was a faint smudge, almost like a handprint. It was too large to be mine and too high up for the baby. Just 5 long, pale streaks trailing down the wall like something had leaned there watching. We moved a week later. There was no official report, no police involvement. What would we have said that something inhuman climbed into our crib and gently placed our son on the floor? That glowing eyes had stared at us for weeks before making their move? No one would have believed it, but we believe it. We believe it every time our son wakes up crying at 2:46 a.m. sharp. We believe it when he points at the empty corner of a room and says, "Eyes." We've never used a baby monitor since.